Welcome back to Biblical Root Study. We are on our second week, going through Job chapter 8 through 14. And I have to confess, I didn't write anything down this week, but I'm going to try getting through it a lot quicker than we did last week, just to make the video shorter. But these will all be added as we go. And you also see why I didn't add anything, because there's a lot of poetry going back and forth. There are things we're learning about God, and we're going to get into those. But let's just jump into the text. So, Job chapter 8. Then Bildad the Shuhite answered, "How long will you say these things, and the word of your mouth be a mighty wind? Does God pervert justice, or does Almighty pervert what is right? If your sons sinned against him, then he delivered them into the power of their transgression. If you would seek God and implore the compassion of the Almighty, if you are pure and upright, surely now he would arouse himself for you and restore your righteous estate. Though your beginning was insignificant, yet your end will increase greatly. Please inquire of past generations and consider the things searched out by their fathers. For we are only of yesterday and knowing nothing, because our days on earth are as shadows. Will they not teach you and tell you and bring forth words from their minds? Can the papyrus grow up without a marsh? Can the rushes grow without water? While it is still green and not cut down, yet it withers before any other plant. So are the paths of all who forget God, and the hope of the godless will perish, whose confidence is fragile, and whose trust is a spider's web. He trusts in the house, but it does not stand. He holds fast to it, but it does not endure. He thrives before the sun, and his shoots spread over his garden. His roots wrap around a rock pile. He grasps a house of stones. He is removed from his place. Then it will deny him, saying, I never saw you. Behold, this is the joy of his way, and out of the dust others will spring. Lo, God will not reject a man of integrity, nor will he support the evildoers. He will yet fill your mouth with laughter, and your lips with shouting. Those who hate you will be clothed with shame, and the tent of the wicked will be no longer. All right, so this is one of the reasons why I'm not writing anything down. Is one, it's poetry, and two, Bildad is wrong in a lot of things, but in another way, he's also right, which it seems really confusing, and it's confusing to me too. But it's kind of, as we're talking about, these different layers of understanding God's word, because everything he's saying are general truths. I mean, this is what he knows of God and what generally seems to be the case. But it's not the case here, but it is also the case, if that makes any sense. I mean, like I said, just digging into it, it's very interesting going through all this Hebrew poetry, because what he's saying here, does God pervert justice? No, of course God doesn't pervert justice. Or does the Almighty pervert what is right? No, he doesn't. You know, this is truth. It's true that he doesn't do that. But it's justice in God's sight, not in their sight. Because what he says is justice happens. Anything that happens is justice. So he looks at what happened to Job's sons. It must be sin. If bad things happen, it must be God's justice coming upon them, which is not the case. He's not right then. And because he doesn't see everything that's going on with God, and I feel like we do this a lot too. So is this a truth about God? Yes, but I mean, in the context he's using it, no. It's not, because we can't just see everything that happens and say automatically bad things only happen to bad people and good things only happen to good people. And then he also says, where was it? maybe it's in this chapter, maybe it's further down. I don't remember if I just read it. Oh, God will not reject a man of integrity, nor will he support the evildoers. Yet he fill your mouth with laughter. And he's talking about, yeah, it's in the next chapter coming up, but he says that, you're going to be fine in the end, then you're going to have more than you had. And that's true. I mean, that's exactly what happens with Job in the end of the story, but it's not always true for everybody. Sometimes the righteous perish, and sometimes good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people. So these are all just general truths and understanding, and he's speaking from his understanding, Bildad's understanding, but not necessarily, he's not being a prophet. He's not revealing the truth of God in that. But the Bible is like that because it tells the story that's happening. So just because something's written in there, this isn't the best, this wouldn't be the best verse that you won't want to prove that God is just. Does God prefer justice, or the Almighty prefer what is right? Because he's in this context, he doesn't understand it. He's looking at human justice, which, yeah, let's go on to the next chapter. Then Job answered, "In truth, I know that this is so, but how can a man be in the right before God? If one wishes to dispute with him, he could not answer him once in 1,000 times. Wise in the heart and mighty in strength, who has defied him without harm? It is God who removes the mountain. They know not how. When he overturns them in his anger, who shakes the earth out of his place, and the pillars tremble, who commands the sun not to shine, and sets seals upon the stars, who alone stretches out the heavens and tramples down the waves of the sea, and who makes the Bear, Orion, and Pleiades, and the chamber of the south, who does great things, unfathomable, and wondrous works without number. Were he to pass by me, I would not see him. Were he to move past me, I would not perceive him. Were he to snatch away, who could restrain him? Who could say to him, what are you doing? God will not turn back his anger. Beneath him crouch the helpers of Rahab. How then can I answer him, and choose my words before him? For though I were right, I could not answer. I would not have to implore the mercy of my judge. If I called and he answered me, I could not believe that he was listening to my voice. For he bruises me with a tempest and multiplies my wounds without cause. He will not allow me to get my breath, but saturate me with bitterness. If it is a matter of power, behold, he is the strong one. And if it is a matter of justice, who can summon him? Though I am righteous, my mouth will condemn me. Though I am guiltless, he will declare me guilty. I am guiltless. I do not take notice of myself. I despise my life. It is all one. Therefore I say, he destroys the guiltless and the wicked. If the scourge kills suddenly, he mocks the despair of the innocent. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covers the face of its judges. If it is not he, then who is it? Now my days are swifter than a runner. They flee away. They see no good. They slip like reed boats, like an eagle that swoops on its prey. Though I say, I will forget my complaint. I will leave off my sad countenance and be cheerful. I am afraid of all my pains. I know that you will not acquit me. I am accounted wicked. Why then should I toil in vain? If I should wash myself with snow and cleanse my hands with lye, yet you would plunge me into the pit, and my own clothes would abhor me. For he is not a man that I may answer him, that he may go to court together. There is no umpire between us, who may lay his hand upon us both. Let him remove his rod from me, and let not dread of him terrify me. Then I would speak and not hear him, but I am not like that in myself. So, a lot going on. This is Job answering. Like I said, he agrees with these general truths that Bildad said. And, yeah, he also it is interesting to note of what they see God is. For being who he is, he knows that God made the stars. He sets a seal upon the stars. Who makes the bear, like the Big Dipper, Orion, and Pleiades. So these are constellations. So they know that he rocks mountains, makes earthquakes, does all these things, creator of all things, and unfathomable power and wondrous works. So they get that about God. They understand that God is the creator of all and beyond power. He even goes on and says that he's not a man. He says he's not a man that he can judge with him, but he also says were he to pass by me, I would not see him. Were he to move by me, I would not perceive him. So they talk about not only is God very powerful, he's not some kind of man, but he's also not in human form. He's some spiritual being, as in he doesn't have a body. So they're, the place where he's talking about his body earlier, it's just a poetic language. But you also see, what else do they say? Oh, they talks about God's anger, and God will not turn back his anger. And what he sees happening, which he's wrong about this, he thinks anything that's happening due to him is because God's angry at him, which, as we saw in the first 7 chapters, it has nothing to do with Job being bad. He doesn't understand what's going by. It's not God's wrath on him that bad things are happening. It's actually because God loves and respects him, but that's a hard pill to swallow, going through all of his family dying and losing all of his wealth and being covered in boils. So that's a hard thing to grasp, but he does grasp that whatever God does is beyond him. But also Job is not perfect in this sense, as he is justifying himself by his own judgment and his own scale of righteousness, which he does. He understands a little bit that even if he does everything good, he still has a reason to be wrong in front of God, but he doesn't get it. And we don't get it a lot of times. Seeing bad things happen, we're thinking, what do I need to change in my life? I know I personally do that. So Job is a very hard story to do, but it's very good. And even though we're flying through this, as in doing 7 chapters a week, 7 chapters at a time, but it's a big book and there's a lot to get into. But one thing I did like, and I thought was interesting, he says, there is no umpire between us who may lay his hand upon both of us. So this is Job 9:33. Let's open this up really quick. Job 9:33. All right. And this is called a days man, which in Hebrew, let's pull this up a little bit. So the word is yakik, or yakak. Like I told you, I'm horrible at pronouncing things, and I apologize. But it says, is a primitive root to be right, or to argue, decide, justify, convict, appoint, argue, chasten, convince, correct, daysman, dispute, judge, maintain, plead, reason together, rebuke, reprieve. So being a judge between two people, speaking to them, a daysman, as... yeah, so it's kind of like, from what I understand and when I was reading the commentaries, it's like a mediator, someone who stands between people and judges between them. And yeah, he sees no one to do this, no one to stand between man and God. And this is something that's mentioned that'll come up a couple thousand years later in the Bible and several years later in our study. But it's very interesting that he sees that he is not a man, that he may answer him. They may go to court together. There's no umpire or mediator between us who may lay his hand upon both of us. Yeah, so hopefully that changes, because, we'll see. So let's go to the next chapter. This is still Job talking. In chapter 10, he says, I loathe my own life. I will give full vent to my complaint. I will speak in the bitterness of my soul. I will say to God, do not condemn me. Let me know why you contend with me. Is it right for you indeed to oppress, to reject the labor of your hands, and to look favorably on the schemes of the wicked? Have your eyes of flesh, or do you see as man sees? Are your days as the days of a mortal, or your years as a man's years? That's years, not years. I'm sorry, I'm poorly pronouncing that. That you should seek for my guilt and search after my sin, according to the knowledge I am indeed not guilty, yet there is no deliverance from your hand. Your hands fashioned and made me altogether, and would you destroy me? Remember now that you have made me as clay, and would you turn me into dust again? Did you not pour me out like milk, and curdle me like cheese, clothe me with the skin of flesh, and knit me together with bones and sinews? You have granted me life and loving kindness, and your care has preserved my spirit. Yet these things you have concealed in your heart. I know this is within you. If I sin, you would take note of me, and would not acquit me of guilt. If I am wicked, woe to me, and if I am righteous, I dare not lift up my head. I am sated and disgraced, and conscious of my misery. Should my head be lifted up, you would hunt me like a lion, and again you would show your power against me. You renew your witness against me, and increase your anger towards me. Hardship after hardship is with me. Why then have you brought me out of the womb? Would that I die and no eye had seen. I should have been as though I had not been, carried from womb to tomb. Would he not let my few days alone, withdraw me, that I may have little cheer? Before I go, and I shall not return, to the land of darkness and deep shadow, the land of utter gloom, of darkness itself, of deep shadow without order, and which shines as the darkness. So here is Job getting bold. He is starting to ask God some questions, but it's not in bitterness as in wanting to know what's going on. He even says, if he was guilty, be bad, but if indeed I'm not guilty, yet there's no deliverance. He still couldn't even raise his head, and he understands that, as he says, you have made me as clay. Would you turn me to dust again? So he's seeing God as one of the names that we saw last week, that God is our maker. Where are we? There it is, the Osa. God is our maker, that we are created. And far, far above. So we're definitely just getting a lot of the character of the deity. Even in this poetic form, we're still seeing how high and above us he is, but they're also speaking just from what they know passed down through generations, or proverbs, or wise words, as they say. So let's dig more into this, and we're going to go into the next chapter, which is Job chapter 11. Then Zophar the Naamathite answered, shall a multitude of words go unanswered, and a talkative man be acquitted? Shall the boasts silence men? And shall you scoff and none rebuke? For you have said, my teaching is pure. and I am innocent in your eyes. But would that God might speak and open his lips against you, and show you the secrets of wisdom. For sound wisdom has two sides. Know then that God forgets a part of your iniquity. Can you discover the depths of God? Can you discover the limits of the Almighty? They are high as the heavens. What can you do? Deeper than Sheol. What can you know? Its measure is longer than the earth, and broader than the sea. If he passes by or shuts up or calls an assembly, who can restrain him? For he knows false men, and he sees iniquity without investigating. An idiot will become intelligent when the foal of the wild donkey is born a man. If you would direct your heart right and spread out your hand to him, if iniquity is in your hand, put it far away, and do not let wickedness dwell in your tents. Then indeed you could lift up your face without moral defect, and you would be steadfast and not fear. For you would forget your trouble, as waters that have passed by, you would remember it. Your life would be brighter than noonday, darkness would be like the morning. Then you would trust, because there is hope, and you would look around and rest securely. You would lie down, and none would disturb you, and many will entreat your favor. But the eyes of the wicked will fail, and there will be no escape for them, and their hope is to breathe their last. So far, I think he is the one that understands God the least, I guess, of his friends, from what I'm seeing in some ways. He does mention Sheol, which we need to get into that and see what it is. Job 11:8. We'll open this up. Job 11, verse 8. And in the King James Version says, "It is high as heaven. What canst thou do? Deeper than hell." And the word here is Sheol in Hebrew. They say Hades, or the world of the dead, as a subterranean retreat, including its accessories and inmates. So either grave, hell, or pit. So Sheol is the grave, or the land of the dead. So we don't know much about that. All we know is it is deep. And it's talking about measured longer than the earth. God's limits are deeper than Sheol. So this is talking about, it's got to be a deep sense of what they're saying, because, in this section, we go a lot into what happens after we die and what they believed to know of us. But we'll get into that in a little bit further. But he also says, "For he knows false men, and he sees iniquity without investigating," which is something that he knows of God, or at least he thinks he does, which, for what I know, is true, that he's saying God knows everything. God doesn't have to look into anything. He just knows everything, which would be, all-knowing. But this is just in a poetic form from a guy that's not that reliable. So we're putting that still in this sense so far until it's further revealed. That's just in the general truth figure speech region, like way out here. And let's go to the next chapter. Job 12. Then Job responded, "Truly then, you are the people, and with you wisdom will die. But I have intelligence as well as you. I am not inferior to you. And who does not know such things as these? I am a joke to my friends, the one who called on God, and he answered him. The just and blameless man is a joke. He who is at ease holds calamity and contempt, has prepared for those whose feet slip. The tent of the destroyers prosper, and those who provoke God are secure, whom God brings into power. But now ask the beasts, and let them teach you, and the birds of the heavens, and let them tell you, or speak to the earth, and let it teach you, or let the fish of the sea declare to you. Who among you all does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In whose hand is the life of every living thing, and the breath of all mankind? Does not the ear test words, as the palate tastes its food? Wisdom is with aged men, with long life is understanding. With him are wisdom and might. To him belong counsel and understanding. Behold, he tears down and cannot be rebuilt. He imprisons a man that can be no release. Behold, he restrains the waters and they dry up, and he sends them out, and they inundate the earth. With him are strength and sound wisdom. The misled and the misleader belong to him. He makes counselors walk barefoot, and makes fools to judge. He looses the bonds of kings, and binds their loins with a girdle. He makes priests walk barefoot, and overthrows the secure ones. He deprives the trusted ones of speech, and takes away the discernment of the elders. He pours contempt on nobles, and loosens the belt of the strong. He reveals mystery from the darkness, and brings the deep darkness into light. He makes the nations great and destroys them. He enlarges the nations and leads them away. He deprives of intelligence the chief of the earth's people, and makes them wander in a pathless waste. They grope in darkness with no light, and he makes them stagger like a drunken man. So this is also a very interesting chapter from Job's perspective. Is not only is God, he can make all men, it says it is made like clay out of the dust, and he made the stars in heaven, and he can shake the mountains, but they also see that he controls people. He makes priests walk barefoot and overthrows the secure one. He deprives trusted ones of speech and takes away the discernment of the elders. So this means knowledge of those is from God. Which, like I say, we can't get. This is such deep poetry. It's hard saying what they actually believe or see, or what they do and how he's explaining it. Because, for example, he makes priests walk barefoot and overthrows the secure ones. Is Job one of the secured ones that he's talking about? He's also saying the wicked are getting away with things, but the righteous are not. So this is, the first mention of the word priest, which if we look into Job 12:19, and they translate it in the King James princes, but the word is Cohen. It's an officiant or a priest, and it's acting as priest, chief ruler, prince. So it could be in the sense of prince there rather than priest, but either way it doesn't reveal a lot. Like, does God have priests? It doesn't even say that this person is the true God's priest or prince, because he's not being treated well, and we can't read too much into the scripture of what it's talking about. We can just take it as face value in this level way out here of figures of speech, because this is definitely Hebrew poetry. But it also talks about with him are wisdom and might, and to him belong counsel and understanding. Behold, he tears down and cannot be rebuilt. He imprisons a man, and there can be no release. So definitely their understanding God is sovereign. He's very, very powerful. They also says, he can call a meeting. No one could say no to it. He's controlled the information of the elders. He's more powerful than any man and can control them with his might. So we'll move on to the next chapter. Job chapter 13. Behold, my eye has seen all this. My ear has heard and understood it. What you know, I also know. I am not inferior to you. But I would speak to the Almighty, and I desire to argue with God. But you smear with lies. You are all worthless physicians. Oh, that you would be completely silent, and that it would become your wisdom. Please hear my argument and listen to the contentions of my lips. Will you speak what is unjust for God, and speak what is deceitful for him? Will you show partiality for him? Will you contend for God? Will it be well when he examines you? Or will you deceive him as one deceives a man? He will surely reprove you if you secretly show partiality. Will not his majesty terrify you, and the dread of him fall on you? Your memorable sayings are proverbs of ashes. Your defenses are defenses of clay. Be silent before me, so that I may speak, and then let come on me what may. Why should I take my flesh in my teeth, and put my life in my hands? Though he slay me, I will hope in him. Nevertheless, I will argue my ways before him. This also will be my salvation. For a godless man may not come before his presence. Listen carefully to my speech, and let my declaration fill your heart. Behold, now I have prepared my case. I know that I will be vindicated. Who will contend with me? For then I will be silent and die. Only two things do not do to me. Then I will not hide from your face. Remove your hand from me, and let not the dread of you terrify me. Then call, and I will answer. Or let me speak, then reply to me. How many are my iniquities and sins? Make known to me my rebellion and my sin. Why do you hide your face, and consider me your enemy? Will you cause a driven leaf to tremble, or will you pursue the dry chaff? For you write bitter things against me, and make me to inherit the iniquities of my youth. You put my feet in the stocks, and watch all my paths. You set a limit for the soles of my feet, while I am decaying like a rotting thing, like a garment that is moth-eaten. So he's bringing up Job, and he's talking about God and kind of standing up for himself. We'll see where that gets him. Let's go on to the next chapter. Man who is born of woman is short-lived and full of turmoil. Like a flower, he comes forth and withers. He also flees like a shadow and does not remain. You also open your eyes to him and bring him into judgment for yourself. Who can make the clean out of the unclean? No one. Since his days are determined, the number of his months is with you, and his limits you have set so that he cannot pass. Turn your gaze from him, that he may rest, until he fulfills his day like a hired man. For there is hope for a tree, when it is cut down, that it will sprout again, and its shoots will not fail. Though its roots grow old in the ground, and the stump dies in the dry soil, at the scent of water it will flourish, and put forth sprigs like a plant. But man dies and lies prostrate. Man expires, and where is he? As water evaporates from the sea, and a river becomes parched and dried up, so man lies down and does not rise, until the heavens are no longer. He will not awake and be aroused out of his sleep. Oh, that you would hide me in Sheol, that you would conceal me until your wrath returns to you, that you would set a limit for me and remember me. If a man dies, will he live again? All the days of my struggle I will wait until my change comes. Will you call, and I will answer you? You will long for the work of your hands, for now you number my steps. You do not observe my sin. My transgression is sealed up in a bag, and you wrap up my iniquity. But the failing mountain crumbles away, and the rock moves from its place. Water wears away stones. Its torrents wash away the dust of the earth. So you destroy man's hope. You forever overpower him, and he departs. You change his appearance and send him away. His sons achieve honor, but he does not know it. or they become insignificant, but he does not perceive it. But his body pains him, and he mourns only for himself. So I found this pretty interesting because they talking about Sheol and death. I'm sorry, I got highlighted this color. I don't know how to unhighlight it or change it. Like I said, I'm not very good in this Bible.com thing. It works really good on your phone for highlighting stuff, but it's really hard to work on the computer for me personally, though. But it's yellow and it's hard to read. Sorry, just went off there. But in this, he sees that the length of his days and everything is in God's power. How long he lives, what he does, how it goes, it's totally in God's control. And I mean, you can tell from Job's life, he can feel that because, like he said earlier, he's like, ask a fish, ask a bird, ask anything. You can tell what's happening to me is from God. This is not just nothing happening. This is something, and it's who's in charge of all things? God. And I like this mention seems to carry on a lot. But like a flower comes and forth and withers, he also flees like a shadow and does not remain. So seeing our life is very small perspective. And I mean, in the grand scheme of things, we are just like a fading flower that's here one day and the next it's not. But it talks about a trees cut down, but then they'll still spring forth and come again. And it's talking kind of about resurrection. He seems, in his poetic form, he thinks his change will come. Talks about dying, going into death, and then set his limit for me. If a man dies, will he live again? All the days of my struggle, I will wait until my change comes. So what is this change that he's referring to? Like a tree that dies, cuts off, but comes back again. So, I mean, it's pretty interesting. It's buried in poetry. But he also talks about a judgment coming away. That he says, you forever overpower him and he departs. You change his appearance and send him away. Where was it? Let me see. Sorry, I lost my place. My transgression is sealed up in a bag, and you wrap up my iniquity. So, his sins are sealed up and waiting for something else. So, I mean, like I said, it's deep in poetry. It's hard to understand, but excuse me, he has some concept of a life after death. What exactly is it? It doesn't say. It doesn't go into more depth, but he has a concept of it, and it's something that they're waiting. He's waiting for a hope. He's waiting for something to happen after his death and after this to happen. So yeah, I will go into my blog, and as you see, for the last week, I wrote down all the facts, the dislikes, the likes of God, facts about God, our relationship with God, all the things that we went over, and the names of God. Put them all, broke down into a week. So all the new things we go into this week, I will update it sometime and fill all these other ones out, and they'll just continue to grow as we go through the Bible. And that is at biblicalrootstudy.wordpress.com if you want to follow along and read the things. Like I said, I'll update that sometime this week when I get into it. But it's a hard book. This is a lot harder concept than I was thinking it would be, because poetry, and trying to understand that when all you have is poetry, what do you have to base that on? You know, like if you have more things and then you look at poetry, you can kind of understand because you have a base. But when you only have when you don't have the base and you only have poetic language, and you have several people that aren't necessarily a trustworthy person, when you know what they're saying doesn't line up with something else, it's hard to pick and choose the truth out of those things. But I'll figure out how to write that, and I'll just put most of those things in this category out this way. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and hopefully it went a little bit shorter this time than it did last time. And I'll go through it next week again, and we'll go through another 7 chapters. So grace and peace, and thanks for watching. Have a great day.